Hey, it's Phil, and we're live. Woo! Okay. So today I want to talk about composition and intuition. Um, and you might wonder what that means. Now, if you've written anything or created anything really, you realize that there are steps to the creation, and this is broadly called composition. How is it that you compose this? Okay, so um, for example, in writing something, um, you might ask yourself, what is the purpose? Who is my audience? Um, what do I want them to feel or think? If you're writing a short story, you ask yourself the questions about a short story that someone that someone reading it might have. You know, exactly how long is it going to be? That is it going to be a piece of microfiction, just a few hundred words, or is it going to be like a regular short story? You know, maybe up to up to 10, 20,000 words. Are we getting into novella territory? You ask yourself, what is my genre? And actually, there are several. Genre is a big word. So, and so there are several genres. There's several categories of genres, I should say. From how a reader should approach a story. That is, should the reader approach this as drama or comedy or horror? Or suspense. Should There's also the kind of motifs you're going to use. Are we looking at fantasy, modern day realistic, horror, science fiction, something else, or perhaps a mix of these things? So you ask yourselves all these questions. This is all part of the composition process, almost like a pre-composition process. But then the part comes where you actually have to write. And what I do is that I create an outline. I create an outline so I have something to work against. Because this is, for me, the outline allows the intuition to come in. I find that if I just start writing, I hit a roadblock. If it's short enough, I can finish it. I can do microfiction pretty easily. But if I want something even a little bit longer, I'm going to need the direction that an outline provides. And so I outline the classic parts of the short story. The exposition, the narrative hook, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, the denouement or the resolution. This is stuff you learn in high school, but applied to the writing instead of applied to the reading. And then something that I'm sure you learned about theme in high school, but theme becomes a really important part of studying fiction in college. And for me, theme is the part that really has to be intuitive. I can say that the story of Leanne is a story about fate versus character. So I can write that down, but what does that mean, and how does theme work with composition? How does theme work with the outline? How many times do I have to mention um, fate versus free will in these stories. In let's say the story of Lan. You know, um, sorry, how many times in the exposition do I have to do that? And in the rising action, and how do I use the climax to represent that? Um, and that's something that I prefer to discover in my writing. I mean, I can think about it, I can sort of outline it, but ultimately, I end up discovering that stuff, and that to me is one of the great joys. But it's also a little scary, you know. Um, yeah. So I'll just give you an example. Um, And a little reminder, Leanne is the woman in Journey's most recent completed artwork. You know, she's uh she's sitting, there's a mask floating above her, there's swords all around her, and I had to write a story about that. So I had to interpret what the hell all that meant in the story. Um, and I figured that that was the climax of the story because it is really such a dramatic piece. And um, and I actually don't know why I decided on fate, but what I decided that happened is that that mask that's hovering above her is a mask. Um, it's a mask of fate's servants. Fate wants people. The fates need servants to enforce their will. Usually things go their way, but sometimes some people need to be, you know, killed. Really, you know. So if you disobey the fates, if you, let's say, trash a temple of the fates, you know, if you classically in Greek mythology, if you killed your kin, um, the punishment from the fates would be swift and severe, and and so this is the fates making their pitch to to Leanne, um, and they're showing her all those swords, and then I had to ask myself, well, why are those swords so attractive to her? And I thought that Leanne's a person with a lot of emotional problems, um, some messed up brain chemistry, and the swords represent that if she goes with the fates, she'll only ever have to do one thing, and that's kill. She won't have to try to lead a life in which her brain is really actively working against her. You know, um, and this is all from intuition. I mean, I sort of, I guess you can see some logic in it, but I could have answered all those questions in a completely different way. Now let's get to the beginning of the story. How do I put Journeyman together with all this? Journeyman being our guide. He's the one who's obsessed with mass. So we have Veneer, the Book of Mass. He's trying to learn more about the world. He knows a lot of things, but he wants to experience things too. And mass are important to him. Now, by the way, why? If you look at one of Journey's earliest paintings, an early version of the Journeyman character, that guy has a lot of mass on him. And why are mass important to a robot slash golem, that's Golem, kind of character? And that's because he sees people make faces when they feel emotions. Again, this is the answer that I came up with. I'm not sure. I think I came up with that one. Journey, forgive me if you're the one who came up with it. But how do we get these two characters together? And again, this is a mix of composition and intuition. In an earlier story that I wrote, Leanne gives Journeyman his first mask. It's a mask given to her by 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 an on again off again lover who created Journeyman and who dies in creating him, and the mask allows her to essentially be ignored in society, but it allows people. It basically allows her to go through her life without people judging her. That's kind of what the mask does. You know, people look at her and they see what they expect to see. You know, so even if she's screwed up looking and disheveled, you know, after having been on some sort, you know, after having like spent like a week in her little apartment because she's so depressed and she hasn't taken care of herself, you know, if she wants to step out, she can wear the mask. But she thought that Journeyman, so who's messed up in so many more ways than she is, at least socially, it's not like he's sad, but he's a walking tin can. You know, people are not just going to accept him when he sits down to have a beer. So she thought, well, this guy needs this mask all the time. So she gives him this mask. She loses something that's helped her live her life, and you know that it's an act of friendship. You know, she's Journeyman's first friend, and closest friend after that. So Journeyman, with his obsession with masks, partially started by Leanne, wants to find this mask of fate. He doesn't even know exactly what it does, but he wants to find it. And she, when she's feeling up, is a thrill seeker, so she decides to go with him on this quest. And in finding the mask, you know, the Fates make this offer to Leanne, and Journeyman, with his obsession, has brought Leanne a mask. Essentially, has brought her into contact with a mask that is very dangerous. You know, he might lose his best friend in the world because of his obsession with the mask. Because if she decides to serve the Fates, you know, that's not just a full-time job. That's like going to a different plane of existence. You're not you know, and worse, you lose part of yourself. The Fates are offering her the equivalent of a deal with the devil. You know, you never have to worry about your emotions again. You know, well, what does that mean? You know, and this is gonna, even the contemplation of this offer breaks Journeyman's heart. And now we see how fate is interwoven, or is it just dumb luck? I don't know. But now we see how fate is interwoven into these characters thematically. You know, Leanne helps Journeyman out. In doing so, she gives up a tool that she was using to survive. And she helps spark Journeyman's interest in mass. His interest in mass leads him to find this mask of Fate's servants. She accompanies him because she's in an up mood. She's in the manic side, so to speak. But she's also tempted because her lows have gotten lower. because she doesn't have the mask that he has as a crutch anymore. You know, and if this sounds a little bit like the series of events which led Oedipus to gouge out his eyes and Jocasta to hang herself, well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, you know, do the fates control us, or is it our character? You know, and that's an old question. And it sort of goes around in a loop, and that's how composition and intuition came together in that story. All right. Thanks, you all. Can't wait to see Journey stream tonight, and I'll be there. All right. Bye.